doing this in the next 7 days, the background has to be different.
Doesn't matter.
At the very least.
I know. As you know you watched this last week, the background's the same. We're filming these back to back. So you start it.
Also, welcome to this episode. Which party in this war between Palestine and Gaza and whatever Israel, which party is in between there that can talk to either side? I think like a mediator. I think America can do that because I've seen like in the initial stages you could see the Secretary of State whatever going to meet the Palestinians from America. Then the same person following it goes and meets the Israelis. So looks like this person has rapport on either side. There are people who have rapport on either side. So how about we have programs, let's say in the schools, where children are taught, peaceful standards or peaceful education, something like peace education, something like to try to water down the inherited hate. Okay. So how about we have programs like in the schools in Gaza, as well as programs in schools in Israel, where we are actually preaching, oneness, peace, respecting the other person's integrity, trying to water down the hatred which has been passed down from generation to generation. Because that's what's being done, at least it's a small scale, but in the Ugandan refugee camps, where you find the Nuers and the Dinkas, they don't necessarily like each other that much, but the children don't fight anymore, because there have been concerted efforts by UN agencies, who are funding money to come and desensitize the hate. It's easier to desensitize this hate among younger ones. It hasn't caught us.
If you lose the children, you lose the generation.
Yeah. So it desensitizes hate among the young ones because within 10 years, these young ones will be the adults. And now you have adults who don't hate the other tribe as much. So if the UN can do such here, why can't it do the same
there are those that argue the UN can't do anything.
Maybe the UN may not do much, but America can. Because it has influence in Israel. If you put sanctions when they escalate war, something like that.
Well, the sanctions, okay, I'm always been kind of a believer that sanctions don't really work or accomplish anything because the only people that get hurt with sanctions are the general population, the people in the general population. People can talk about say whatever they want about Putin or about Russia, but the reality is when the United States is putting all these sanctions on Russia, it's not accomplishing what they wanted to accomplish. And if sanctions do accomplish something on nations, it's usually to the detriment of the general population.
Sure.
It doesn't really change the government all that much.
Yeah, so for me, that's what I was thinking we could do, that could be done for the Israel-Palestine, conflict. I may not be accurate. Like I said before this, I'm probably naive.
Well, and I don't have the answer.
Neither do you. But at least some, part of our viewers could actually have, their suggestions. You share in the comments. But so we realize now Israel is fighting almost all her neighbors. Anyway, so Iran sent a missile to Israel. They were responding to the attacks on the Hezbollah people in Lebanon. Because it's Hezbollah, apparently they're connected to Iran, something like that. They are partners or something, or allies. So Iran threw missiles at Israel, and now it's warning Israel, if at all you retaliate, you get more damage. etc. Now America is backing Israel. Where do you see this going?
I'm looking at it maybe politically, but I'm also looking at it within the lens of I hate to use the term religious point of view because I don't really like the term religion or religious. But I also have to recognize that how I look at this issue is influenced by the religious lens through which I look at this. And it seems to me that the Jews have been the central point of God's, and I speak to this from my perspective as a Christian.
The Jews are not even Christians.
The Jews have been the central. They've been a central focus of God's work in this world throughout history because the Jews.
Is there evidence of that in the last 100 years?
Well, but the reality is, like, even for me as a Christian, my very Savior is Jewish. You know, so that salvation is coming to the world through a Jewish rabbi named Jesus, who, you know, is the Son of God, who's a descendant of King David. The world is being blessed because of that. So you're seeing God at work in the world through the Jews, whether you talk about historically or whether you see through the influence of Jesus, who was a Jew, and his influence upon the whole world. So the Jews are a central focus of God's work in the world. And the question is, are the Jews still part of God's plan in the world? And how do we interpret the book of Revelation? And how do we interpret all the prophecies of the Old Testament?
You're moving away from the camera.
Yeah,
Maybe we tilt it this side.
I've been a Christian Zionist. That's why, like early on when I was younger, I was supportive of Israel no matter what, because I felt like God's promises are forever. And God has made promises to the Jews, and many, even Old Testament promises, have still not yet been fulfilled. I don't believe his work is done with Jews.
But this approach would bring an atheist to ask, okay, is God, then this is God for the Jews, not for everyone. Because if the Jews are doing harm, then they should be held accountable.
No, what I argue, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, God is at work through the Jews, but it doesn't necessarily mean that everything that they do is right, because even you look in the Old Testament, God punished the northern kingdom of Israel by letting them be led away in captivity by the Assyrians, and he punished the southern kingdom, Judah, by letting them being carried away into captivity by the Babylonians, but then he brought them back. But God is still at work through them. So God is not tolerating sin. So it doesn't mean we just accept everything as being right, but I can still accept the fact that God's promises to the Jews are still there. Believing that God is at work with the Jews and accepting the modern state of Israel is not necessarily the same thing. Because you look at the modern state of Israel, the modern state of Israel for the most part is very secular. It's actually a very secular kind of government. Is being supportive of the Jews the same thing as being supportive of Israel? Does that mean I have to support everything that Israel does? And that's where my views have modified over the years. And I used to be kind of the same way with America. Like I would always, at one time in my life, I kind of blindly accepted George W. Bush's narrative about the Afghanistan war and the Iraq war, and I supported all of those because I kind of got wrapped into my loyalty and allegiance to the United States. But in time, I began to separate those two by realizing, okay, I'm an American and I love America, but it doesn't mean I condone everything that we do as a nation. I can say the same thing about, I can believe that God is at work through the Jewish people, but yet not agree with everything that the modern state of Israel does. And that's kind of how I approach this now. And I don't have all the answers on this.
When you come through the religious lens, now to me, a Ugandan, I don't see how God is at work through the Jews anymore. So, or maybe God's work began with the Jews, Jesus Christ, and etc. But then it's not, I didn't get the word through a Jewish person. The Ugandan pastors, the American pastors, missionaries, most missionaries actually not from Israel, and they're preaching the word and they're doing God's work. So what if maybe God's work has extended beyond the Jews, and we all can do the same work? So I'm thinking, I believe in peace. I believe I believe in sovereignty for every nation. I don't believe in being bullied. And what I see is that because Israel has the backing of America, Israel does whatever it wants.
As America pretty much does whatever it wants.
Exactly. And as I was following the Israel-Gaza conflict, Biden kept saying, okay, we shall encourage for a ceasefire, but then also we want to consider what Israel thinks. They never had a stand for a long time. It was about how Israel thinks. Why? What? So there was enough reason to call for a ceasefire, but then they also had to respect Israel's integrity. So it was all about Israel making the decision. Until at some point they actually had to enforce a ceasefire. I don't know if it actually happened. I didn't follow to that end. But whatever Israel decides to do, they do, and it's like they're untouchable. No one is going to question them, and the UN can't question them. America just backs them. Something is not right. Something is not right. So, because right now Israel is pointing the guns at, let's say, Lebanon, Gaza, and now Iran. So if I just sit back, I'm like, okay, yeah, they're Israel, it's okay. Tomorrow they'll point the guns at Uganda. You get? Or they'll point the guns at America. That's when you realize, okay, this is too much. You understand?
Probably not,
Yeah?
though. That's
This
probably
is-
not going to happen, though, because they don't have an interest in doing that.
You never know. You never know. You never know, because actually Israel has ever come to Uganda. You've heard of the 2 weeks or something, the 14-day war. When Amin was here, they came here for a week. I've forgotten the days. 7 days in Uganda. They came here for 7 days, and because Amin had actually Netanyahu, the current prime minister, his brother died in Uganda. If you've heard about it, some particular hijackers hijacked a plane in Uganda. They had reason to come to Uganda with military force. Then 1978, I think, something like that. It happened then. It can happen now. Then it was maybe a small scale thing. It can happen this time, a bigger time. Anything can happen in this world, especially in this world. When Israel is shooting Gaza, no one talks about it. It's okay. They are defending themselves. But when the Hamas hit Israel, oh my God, they are killing Israelites, and it's making news. You know, how many Israelites have died in this war? Probably a few thousands. But compared to the other ones,
That's a lot more. Yeah.
it's way more.
Yeah.
But then the Israelites are talked about as if they are more than the other side, and that's not fair. Honestly, I would never say that I support Israel. Well, I support peace, but if I were to choose one side, I'd rather choose the other side, because you can't go around bullying people and shooting everyone down, and for you untouchable. We need someone who can actually hold these people accountable for what they are doing. I don't know who that person is. So sometimes that person could be Iran.
But then I know the arguments on the other side would be the arguments about Hamas, and that how Hamas has more support than, and they're engaging in certain acts that would be considered terrorism.
What is
And
terrorism? Just language.
When you're trying to create terror, and fear through violence and bloodshed for political purposes, that's terrorism.
That's terrorism.
That's terrorism.
So Israel is terrorists in Gaza.
So because
exactly
of the
doing
fact,
that.
because of the but what I'm saying, and I get what you're saying, but I'm saying for me, when you say that you would rather be on the side of Palestine, because I used to say I'd rather be on the side of Israel. But I haven't shifted now to say that I'd rather be on the side of Palestine, because I'm realizing that it's more complex, and I think that that's one of the problems is that people are picking sides. Free Palestine, no matter what, or I stand with Israel, no matter what.
So,
and that solves nothing.
Look at it this way. So you find this someone is like this man who's 25 years old. He goes to the gym. He has a six-pack. He's a boxer, and he's beating this kid who is 5 years old. Which side will you take? Oh no, but this kid spat on me. He has to be taught manners, and he's beating obliterating the kid.
I
is
don't
bleeding.
know if that's a good example.
No, it is a good example. Why? Because it is a good example because, for example, Hamas. You know, Hamas, however potent they are compared to Israel and the backing of the mighty America. They are nothing compared to that backing.
The problem is, if you make that argument, you're never going to solve anything, because then you're just simply going back and forth. You're not actually solving anything, because now because the thing is, even if this is a bigger power or a bigger, it has a bigger impact. If you're not dealing, because the thing is, if you have Hamas doing things like a quote-unquote act of terror, like something that Israel would consider to be terrorist, and people are killed. The people who are victims of that only know that their loved ones were killed and that their area was bombed. They're not going to be sympathetic to your argument that, hey, but you're part of a nation that's bigger and more.
But even that nation is killing our people.
It's not going to solve anything because all you're going to see is how you're being attacked and you're being hurt and people you love are being killed. Even if it's on a smaller scale, those lives and those people are still important to you. And so it's not going to solve anything.
My point is, when I brought that analogy, one person is bigger and stronger and whatever than the other. Usually in a fight where you're having unbalanced power, the person with the bigger power or who is in a better position has more power to actually stop the conflict than the other side. If you find a little boy fighting a big man, the big man has power of just holding this boy and like, okay, let's just talk. You understand?
Yeah, but I know that
he can just put him in a place. The one with more power has a bigger say at ending this rather than stopping it.
But of course, there's the argument that Israel has tried to do that, but those attempts have been not accepted.
I don't think so. When they say, okay, now we've made attempts to actually, come to a peaceful agreement, etc., at what cost? You could find that they've put conditions that are favorable only to them, and the other person is basically not benefiting from it, basically losing. You don't expect someone to say, okay, yeah, we're giving you this, but okay, you give us half of your country. They will not give it to you. They will not give it. So yes, you're making efforts, but the efforts are basically a mockery. I believe the bigger power, yes, they come in and they offer a deal on the table, but the deal is favoring them. That is not helpful. But anyway, so I may not have the details.
Yeah. So,
but
I mean, we can throw this out to those who want to comment. I mean, what are your thoughts on this?
No, but when you look at this, it could.
For me, whatever. For you, you may look at it very simply. I know that for everybody I talk to that has a strong opinion on this, it's simple and it's straightforward to them. And that's why, to me, it's not straightforward, because it's straightforward to everybody who takes a strong position on this. It tells you that there's something a lot bigger going on here.
Because Israel threatens to retaliate. Do you think they're going to retaliate with Israel, with Iran?
I don't know, because it's hard to say what's going to happen.
What could happen?
I would say probably not. But I don't know. So I get kind of animated because, to be honest with you, I don't have the answers. I don't know.
All I see is a very big power with high technology and etc. and all the backing, destroying relatively remote people who are less developed. People are suffering. They are killing people in the hospitals. They may say that they are warning them, but to me, from what I see, they are killing people indiscriminately, and they don't care. And looking at the figures,
and of course, that's not
the figures.
The pro-Israel people would say that that's not what they're doing. They're not killing indiscriminately, and they don't care.
But they've killed very many children.
Yeah, but they wouldn't say they're doing it indiscriminately or that they don't care.
You don't.
They won't deny that the deaths are taking place.
You wouldn't say you're not killing indiscriminately if you're bombing a hospital where people that you have wounded are getting support. Then you say you're not killing indiscriminately. Your bombs have wounded these people, these young people. Okay, let's say the men are guilty. For some reason, men are not counted. they can be killed. Okay, let's say children and women. They're in a hospital. They've been injured by your bombs. Then you also bomb that hospital.
See, what I would
apparently
like to
because you're bombing the hospital to take out the Hamas people who are hiding under the hospital. So it's not indiscriminate.
I'll have conversations with people like you, who tend to side more with the Palestinians, and then have other people who are more, some of my friends who are just more supporting of take the side of Israel. But I can never get these people in the same room to debate each other to see how they respond to each other's arguments.
Let's have them in the comments.
Yeah. So so what would you say to me? I still believe that God, as a Christian and someone who believes in the Bible, I don't believe that God is done working with the Jews. So that's still an issue
I never think about that.
because there's all kinds of Old Testament prophecies
think about that.
have not even been fulfilled yet in terms of
Because me, when my interpretation of the Bible is that when Jesus came, he fulfilled the Old Testament. So for me, everything about the Old Testament is fulfilled. I might be wrong, but that's how I believe. Jesus came, fulfilled the Old Testament. New Testament came in, and now that's what you're following. So,
right,
but
and there are those in the church that
Yeah.
that's the Christians debate that too.
that's what that's how I look at it. And if they're Old Testament prophecies, then whatever was promised was for the Israelites. There's no it affects me. What affects me really is the New Testament. That's why there are particular laws in the Old Testament that we don't follow necessarily anymore, because they were for the Jews. So if God is not done with the Jews, with the Jews as regards the Old Testament, that is for them. Now for me, I'm following what He has in the New Testament.
We have a lot here, so Paul, I mean, we'll have to see how people respond to.
Yeah, is there a chance that we could be having a world war on our hands?
World War, there's always because we've had world wars before. I mean, I think the next one is going to be even bigger, but there's always a possibility of a world war. But I think the next world war is going to lead to billions of deaths. It's going to be huge.
Yeah, but most likely not in Uganda, so.
No, so that's why. Yeah.
That's why you should stay here.
Yeah, most likely not in Uganda. So,
right.
Yeah, it's an interesting discussion. So thank you for staying with us on this, and we'll look forward to some of your comments to see what you have to say about what we've said. So, well, I guess we'll see you in another 7 days. Any final comments you want to make, Paul?
Nothing.
No? All right. Bye for now.